Hey everyone! Welcome back to Super English Talks. I'm Jara, and today we're talking about something that many of you ask about all the time: how to sound like a native English speaker in 2025. A lot of learners know grammar really well, but speaking naturally in everyday conversations can still feel difficult. Don't worry, today I'm going to explain everything in a simple way, with clear tips and examples. I'll also share some of my own experiences so you can learn from them. Let's get started. When I first moved to the US, to be honest, I wasn't always confident with my English. When I moved to the United States, I had to learn a lot of new expressions and slang. I remember once I told a friend that a party was very good. My friend laughed gently and said, "Very good? That sounds so formal. Just say it was awesome or amazing." At first, I was confused. But that moment made me realize something important. Native speakers use casual phrases all the time, and learning those makes your English sound more natural. So today, let's talk about some easy ways to sound more like a native speaker. Tip 1. Use contractions to keep it casual. Contractions are a huge part of natural English. Native speakers use them in almost every conversation. I am, I'm. I will, I'll. I do not, I don't. They are, there. Using contractions helps your speech sound relaxed and natural. When I first arrived, I always said sentences like, "I am going to do that," because that's what I learned in school. But then I heard people say, "I'm going to do that," and I realized that this is how people really talk. Once I started using contractions, conversations felt easier. I felt more comfortable, and it became easier to blend in. Try saying things like, "I'm not sure," instead of "I am not sure." "I'll call you later," instead of "I will call you later." It's a small change, but it makes a big difference. Tip 2. Use everyday expressions. Native speakers use a lot of short, simple, everyday expressions. These phrases help you sound more natural and friendly. For example, instead of, "Would you like to go get coffee?" say, "Let's grab a coffee." Instead of, "Would you like to meet up?" say, "Let's hang out soon." I remember the first time someone said, "Let's hang out soon," I didn't understand because I was used to very formal English. But after hearing it many times, I started using it myself, and now it feels completely natural. Another example is when asking how someone is doing. You don't need to say, "How are you today?" all the time. That can sound a bit formal in casual conversation. Use simple phrases like, "What's up?" "How's it going?" These are common and sound friendly. One time, I asked my friend, "How are you today?" and she laughed and said, "I'm great, but you sound like you're giving a speech." That's when I realized I needed to use more natural everyday phrases. Tip 3 continued. Understand the rhythm and flow of English. I still remember a moment in college that helped me understand this better. I was in a group project, and I had to present some information. I was so focused on the details of my project that I didn't notice how stiff and unnatural I sounded. Then one of my classmates said, "Jara, try not to sound like you're reading from a textbook. Just talk like you're telling us a story." That comment changed everything for me. After that, I started practicing how to speak more naturally by paying attention to rhythm and flow. I learned to stress the important words and let the rest of the sentence flow smoothly off my tongue. When you speak, try not to rush through your words. Think about how the sentence sounds. Take a small pause when needed and let the words move naturally. For example, in the sentence, "I'm going to see a movie later," you would probably stress the word movie, because it's the most important part of the sentence. Practicing this will help your English sound more relaxed and more like a native speaker. Tip 4. Practice with everyday situations. Another great way to sound like a native speaker is to practice English in real-life situations. Think about the things you say every day. How do you order food at a restaurant? How do you ask for directions? How do you make plans with your friends? These everyday moments are the perfect chances to practice natural English. When I first moved to the US, My mom encouraged me to practice speaking in these small situations. For example, when we went to the grocery store, she would tell me, "Jara, go ahead and ask the cashier how their day is going." At first, it felt really awkward and uncomfortable. But the more I practiced, the more confident I became. Now, I find myself having casual conversations with strangers without even thinking about it. That's the power of practicing real-life English. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Tip 5. Show confidence when you speak. This next tip is extremely important: confidence. You might not realize it, but the way you carry yourself when speaking English can make a huge difference. If you sound confident, people will understand you more easily, and you will sound more natural, even if you're still learning. Let me share a personal story about confidence. Back in college, I had a professor who was a native English speaker. She always spoke with such clear confidence. One day after class, I asked her for advice on how to improve my English. She smiled and said, "Jara, do you know what the most important thing is when you speak? It's not perfect grammar or fancy vocabulary. It's owning your words. Speak confidently, even if you're not 100% sure." She explained that native speakers don't always speak perfectly either. They make mistakes too, but they don't hesitate. They speak with assurance. That advice stayed with me. I realized that the more I tried to sound perfect, the more stiff and unnatural I sounded. But when I relaxed and spoke with more confidence, even if I made a small mistake, people listened better and understood me more easily. Here's a simple example. Instead of saying, "I think I know what I'm talking about," try saying, "Here's what I think." You're not being arrogant, you're just trusting yourself. Native speakers speak like this all the time. They don't constantly say things like, "I'm not sure," or "I could be wrong," unless they really need to. Tip 6. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I remember when I first started learning English in a new environment. At the beginning, I was really shy about speaking with native speakers. I was always worried about making mistakes or sounding strange. One day, I was talking to a classmate about an upcoming event, and I said, "I don't know if I can do it." She immediately said, "Jara, just go for it. You've got this. You speak English better than you think." That moment changed everything for me. I realized that if I kept focusing on my mistakes, I would never improve. From that day on, I decided to speak more, even if I made errors. Mistakes aren't something to be afraid of, they're simply part of learning. And the truth is, the more you speak, the faster you grow. Tip 7. Use more natural everyday phrases. In daily life, you probably say things like, "I'm sorry," or "excuse me," when you want to be polite. Those are totally correct, but native speakers often use more casual expressions. For example, instead of "I'm sorry," you can say, "Sorry about that. My bad." I started doing this after watching how native speakers talk to each other. I realized they almost never said, "I'm sorry," unless the situation was serious. Most of the time, they used short, friendly phrases like "my bad" or even just "oops." These expressions feel relaxed and natural. I remember one time when my mom accidentally bumped into someone at the grocery store. Instead of saying a long apology like, "I apologize," she simply said, "Oh, sorry about that." The person smiled and said, "No problem at all." And that was it. No awkwardness, no overthinking. That's when I realized how helpful these small, natural phrases can be. Tip 8. Ask for help like a native speaker. Asking for help is a normal part of life, but many learners use very formal sentences like, "Could you please assist me? I would like help with this." These are correct, but they sound a bit too formal for everyday conversation. Instead, try these more natural phrases. "Can you give me a hand with this? Mind helping me out?" The first time I heard someone say, "Can you give me a hand?" I was confused. I thought they literally wanted my hand. But after learning the meaning, I realized how common and natural the phrase is. Now I use it all the time, and it feels much more relaxed than the formal alternatives. Tip 9. Listen carefully to native speakers. A huge part of sounding like a native speaker is being able to understand how native speakers talk. Listening to conversations, movies, shows, and podcasts helps you learn natural English. It's not just about hearing the words, it's about learning how phrases are used, what they mean in different situations, and how people express emotions. For example, if someone says, "That's lit," they don't mean something is on fire. It's slang for something exciting or amazing. I learned this the hard way. I was listening to a group of friends talking about their weekend plans, and they kept saying, "That party was so lit." I had no idea what they meant. I thought they were talking about candles or lights. But after hearing it several times, I finally understood. And now, when something is exciting, I use it too. Native speakers also say things like, "That's awesome," "That's sick," "That's cool." These expressions show excitement or approval, and using them can make your English sound much more natural and up-to-date. Tip 10. Pay attention to tone and context. Learning the right words is important, but understanding tone and context is just as important. Tone can completely change the meaning of what someone says. Let me share a personal story about this. A few months ago, I was hanging out with some friends, and one of them started talking about a new movie they had watched. They said it was the worst movie ever. It was so bad. At first, I thought they absolutely hated the movie. But then I noticed that they were smiling and laughing. They weren't being serious. They were using sarcasm. Sarcasm is very common in English, and if you don't notice the tone, you can easily misunderstand people. That moment taught me how important it is to pay attention to how someone says something, not just what they say. If you don't understand tone or context, you might take things too literally. That's why listening carefully to native speakers is so important. Pay attention to their facial expressions, their voice, and the way they react to each other. Tip 11. Use expressions of surprise and excitement. Native speakers love to show excitement, surprise, or amazement in conversations. They often use short, simple expressions like, "No way," "You're kidding," "That's amazing," "Seriously?" These expressions make conversations lively and natural. I remember a time when I was telling a friend about a trip I took to a new city. I described the beautiful views, the food, and the fun experiences I had. My friend kept responding with things like, "No way," and "That sounds amazing." It made the conversation feel more engaging and fun. At first, I avoided using these expressions because I thought they sounded too casual. But after listening to my friends, I realized these phrases are completely normal. Native speakers use them all the time, and they make conversations feel warm and natural. A good example is when I visited my parents recently. My mom had planned a surprise birthday party for my dad. When I found out, I said, "No way, you actually pulled it off?" My mom laughed and said, "You always say that when you're surprised." That's when I realized how naturally these phrases had become part of my speech. Tip 12. Ask for clarification naturally. Sometimes you won't understand what someone says, and that's okay. But instead of saying things like, "I don't get it," "Can you repeat that?" you can use more natural expressions like, "Could you run that by me again? I didn't quite catch that. Could you say that one more time? Could you break that down for me?" These phrases sound more friendly and natural in conversation. I remember the first time I heard someone say, "Could you run that by me again?" I had no idea what it meant because I had never learned that phrase in school. But when I asked a friend about it, they explained that it simply means, "Can you say that again?" but in a more relaxed, conversational way. Another example happened when I was talking to my dad about a new tech gadget he had bought. He was explaining a lot of technical details, and I didn't understand all of it. Instead of pretending to understand, I said, "Could you break that down for me?" This helped him explain things more clearly, and the conversation felt smooth and comfortable. Tip 13. Keep conversations going by showing interest. Using natural phrases doesn't just make you sound like a native speaker, it also keeps the conversation flowing. When you ask for clarification politely, it shows that you're paying attention and genuinely want to understand. Even if you're not completely sure, asking in a friendly, natural way helps you sound more confident. Tip 14. Talk about your preferences naturally. Native speakers often talk about the things they like or dislike, but they do it in a relaxed, casual way. Instead of saying, "I really like this," they might say, "I'm really into this. I'm a big fan of this. I'm obsessed with this." These expressions sound more exciting and natural. I remember chatting with a friend about a show we were both watching. She said, "I'm obsessed with this show right now." It wasn't just "I like it," her expression was stronger and more enthusiastic. I started using the phrase too, and it really added energy to my sentences. One time, my dad asked me what kind of music I liked. Instead of saying, "I like pop music," I said, "I'm all about pop music." My dad smiled and said, "That sounds more like you." That's when I realized that these small changes make a big difference in how natural you sound. Tip 15. Complain and vent the natural way. Native speakers don't always talk about their problems in a serious or negative way. They often use humor, exaggeration, or dramatic expressions to make the conversation more interesting. Instead of saying, "I'm really tired today," you might hear people say, "I'm totally wiped out. I'm exhausted beyond belief. I'm dead tired." These expressions show the same meaning, but they sound more lively and conversational. I remember one day at work when I was exhausted after a week of studying. Instead of saying, "I'm tired," I told my friend, "I'm totally wiped out. I think I need a nap." It sounded more natural and relatable. My friend laughed and said, "Yeah, I'm in the same boat." I also remember a funny moment from last summer. I was staying at my aunt's house, and after a long day of sightseeing, I felt completely drained. I said, "I think I'm about to collapse here." My aunt burst out laughing because I used such an exaggerated expression. But that's exactly what native speakers do. They use big, dramatic phrases to add flavor to their conversations. Using exaggeration doesn't mean you're being dramatic in a bad way. You're just making your speech more fun and expressive. Tip 16. Use personal and connected phrases. Another way to sound natural is to use phrases that feel more personal and conversational. For example, instead of "I don't know," say, "I'm not sure, but I'll figure it out." Instead of "Can I ask you a question?" say, "Mind if I ask you something?" These small changes make your speech sound less formal and more friendly. I remember once when I was talking to a friend about a book I had finished. Instead of saying, "I finished this book," I said, "I just wrapped up this book, and I've got to say it was great." The phrase "wrapped up" sounded much more natural and conversational. Tip 17. Share information in a natural way. Earlier, I mentioned how using natural expressions like, "I just wrapped up this book," makes conversations flow more easily. When you speak in a relaxed, everyday way, people respond better and the conversation feels smoother. Now, let's go deeper into another important part of sounding like a native speaker: small talk. Tip 18. Get comfortable with small talk. Small talk is a huge part of everyday life, especially in casual places like coffee shops, the gym, school, work, or even while waiting in line. As English learners, it's important to be able to chat about simple things without feeling awkward or nervous. When I first moved to college, I felt shy about meeting new people. One day, I sat down in the cafeteria and didn't know how to start a conversation with the person next to me. Then a classmate sat down and asked, "How's your day going so far?" That simple question taught me something important. Small talk doesn't need to be complicated. Native speakers rarely start conversations with serious or deep topics. They usually start with easy questions like, "What's up? How's your day been? How's it going?" At first, I thought conversations needed to be meaningful or deep. But I later realized that even talking about the weather or asking how someone's day is going can help break the ice. For example, I was catching up with a friend I hadn't seen in a long time. The first thing I said was, "Wow, it's been forever. How have you been?" That simple question opened the door to a long conversation about college, funny moments from the past, and life updates. We talked for more than an hour and laughed nonstop. That day helped me understand that small talk isn't about saying something profound. It's about connecting with people in a comfortable and friendly way. Another example, I was visiting my aunt, who is one of the most social people I know. She loves starting conversations with everyone she meets. She asked me, "How's work going? Are you enjoying it?" Instead of giving a short answer like, "It's fine," I decided to open up a bit more. I said, "Actually, I'm learning a lot, and I'm starting to feel more confident with everything I'm doing." That simple comment turned into a long, meaningful conversation about work, goals, and future plans. It felt so natural. I realized that even small talk can lead to deeper, more personal conversations if you let it. Tip 19. Express opinions in a natural way. Expressing opinions is something native speakers do all the time, whether they're talking about food, movies, music, restaurants, or TV shows. The way you express your opinion can make your English sound much more natural. Instead of saying, "I like pizza," you can say, "I'm crazy about pizza. I could eat pizza every day." These phrases sound more relaxed and show more personality. I remember talking with my roommate about a new restaurant. Instead of saying, "I want to try that place," I said, "I've been dying to try that place." That expression sounds more excited and natural. Another time, my dad asked if I had seen a new action movie. I told him I haven't, but I've heard it's awesome. "I'm totally planning on seeing it this weekend." Saying, "I'm totally planning on seeing it" sounds much more natural than simply saying, "I will see it." It shows excitement and makes your English sound more like real, everyday conversation. Tip 20. Add energy to your conversations. Native speakers love to show excitement when they talk about their plans. When they say things like, "I'm totally planning on going," or "I can't wait," it gives their speech energy and makes the conversation feel lively. Using enthusiastic expressions like these helps your English sound more natural and engaging. Tip 21. Use fillers to sound more natural. Another way to sound like a native speaker is by using fillers. Fillers are small words like, you know, well, These words don't add meaning, but they help your speech flow smoothly. Native speakers use them all the time, especially when they are thinking or pausing between ideas. For example, if you're trying to think of what to say next, you might say, "Well, let me think about it." Or when sharing an opinion, you might say, "I feel like this movie is going to be amazing." These fillers make you sound more fluent and less like you're reading from a script. I remember talking to a friend about a job offer I had received. Instead of saying, "I don't know if I will accept it," I said, "Well, I'm not sure yet, but I think I might accept it." Using the word "well" made my response sound more casual and confident. Even when I talk to my mom now, I naturally use fillers without thinking. For example, I might say, "I don't know, I'm thinking of going to the park, but I'm not sure if I have enough time." These little fillers help my speech sound relaxed and conversational. Tip 22. Respond with empathy. Native speakers don't just speak, they respond emotionally. When someone shares something personal, They react with understanding and empathy. This helps build deeper connections in conversations. Here are some natural empathetic responses. I totally get that. I can't believe that happened to you. I know exactly what you mean. For example, a friend recently told me they had a very stressful week at work. I didn't just say, I'm sorry to hear that. Instead, I said, I totally get that. Work can be really tough sometimes, especially when you have a lot going on. This response showed that I understood their feelings, not just their words. The same thing happens with my dad. When he tells me about something frustrating that happened during his day, I often say, I know exactly what you mean. That's happened to me too. Using empathetic responses makes conversations feel more real and personal. Native speakers naturally do this all the time. Tip 23. Master casual conversations. One of the biggest keys to sounding like a native speaker is learning to keep your language light and casual, even when discussing important topics. Let me share a personal story. When I was in college, I had a group project with 3 classmates. One of them, Emma, was a native English speaker. She had such a relaxed, friendly way of talking that she instantly made everyone feel comfortable. For example, instead of saying something formal like, let's begin discussing the project requirements, she said. All right, so where should we start? Maybe we can list out a few ideas first. Her casual tone made the whole group feel more open and willing to share. Inspired by her, I started practicing this same approach in my own conversations. Instead of speaking too formally, I try to sound more relaxed and natural. For example, when I talked to my mom about my college assignments, I would say, Mom, this week's been crazy. I've got so many assignments, but I'm getting through them. It felt more natural and more me. Speaking naturally, adding personality and a relaxed rhythm. One thing I learned about speaking English more naturally is that you don't need to sound formal all the time. You can add personality, emotion, and rhythm to your sentences so they feel more like real conversation. Instead of speaking in a robotic way, I started speaking more slowly and expressively. For example, instead of saying something formal like, I am very busy, but I am completing my tasks, I started saying, I've been swamped lately, but I'm managing bit by bit. This version sounds more relaxed, more expressive, and more like something a native speaker would say. Native speakers often use simple, casual expressions like crazy, bit by bit, or I'm getting through it slowly because it makes their speech feel real and natural. Using English naturally with family. Family conversations are one of the best ways to practice natural English because family chats are usually casual. When I help my dad fix things around the house, our conversations are never formal. He might say, Hey, can you grab me the wrench? It's on the counter. And instead of handing it over silently, I might reply, Sure thing, but don't blame me if it doesn't work. That kind of playful joking makes the conversation feel warm and natural. Another time, my mom asked, What are you in the mood for? I said, maybe pasta, but you know. I wouldn't say no to some pizza either. Adding phrases like you know or I wouldn't say no to makes the sentence sound much more like everyday English. Native speakers often add these small, extra phrases, not because they are necessary, but because they make speech flow better. You can try similar expressions. Honestly, I'm not sure what I feel like eating. I could really go for some sushi right now. What do you think? These small additions make your English sound smoother and more conversational, making natural observations in daily life. Native speakers are also great at making simple observations in a natural and expressive way. They don't just describe things, they react to them. One day, I was walking on campus with a friend and we saw people setting up a stage. My friend said, Wow, that's going to be a big show. Look at all the lights they're setting up. The words were simple, but the wow and look at made the sentence feel alive and natural. Later that day, I walked past the library and saw it was extremely busy. Instead of saying, "The library is full," I said, "The library's packed today. Everyone must be cramming for finals." This sounded much more natural and conversational. You can practice this by making small observations around you and adding a little extra emotion or detail. "It's so sunny outside today. Perfect weather for a walk." "That cafe looks super cozy. We should check it out." These simple additions help your English sound more like everyday speech. Speaking naturally, reactions, stories, emotions, and rhythm. One thing that really helps you sound more like a native speaker is how you react to what people say. For example, when my younger brother told me he got a B on a test he thought he would fail, I immediately said, "That's awesome. See? I told you, you're smarter than you think." Using expressions like, "That's awesome," "No way," "I told you," or "That's amazing" adds energy and warmth to your reactions. Native speakers often respond with excitement, humor, or enthusiasm. These reactions make conversations feel lively and natural. Sharing stories the natural way. Storytelling is one of the best ways to sound more native-like. A natural-sounding story includes small, realistic details and conversational phrases. For example, one of my favorite memories from high school was when my friends and I planned a surprise birthday party for a classmate. We tried so hard to keep it a secret. I remember whispering to my friend, "Do you think she suspects anything?" He whispered back, "Not a chance. She's totally clueless." And when we finally surprised her, she was so shocked that she dropped her cake plate. We couldn't stop laughing, and we talked about it for weeks. Instead of saying something formal like, "We planned a surprise party," you can say, "We were trying so hard to keep it a secret, but honestly, everyone almost ruined it at some point." Adding humor, emotion, and small details makes your stories more engaging and more natural. Expressing emotions like a native speaker. Native speakers show their feelings with expressive, casual phrases. Instead of always saying, "I am happy" or "I am excited," they use phrases like, "I'm over the moon," "I'm so pumped right now," "I can't believe this," "This is amazing." When I got my first job offer, I remember calling my mom and saying, "I can't believe it. It finally happened. I got the job." She immediately said, "I'm so proud of you." This emotional exchange felt natural, warm, and real, just like how native speakers talk every day. The rhythm of English, stress and flow. Rhythm plays a huge role in sounding natural. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. When you stress the important words and let the small words flow softly, your speech becomes smoother. I discovered this when I was in college. During a presentation, I focused so much on saying every word perfectly that I sounded stiff and robotic. After the class, my professor pulled me aside and said, "Jara, you're clear, but you need to let the important words pop and let the small words glide by." That night, I practiced in front of the mirror. Instead of saying, "I am here to talk about the topic of innovation in education," I tried, "I'm here to talk about innovation in education." The word innovation stands out. The sentence flows naturally. It sounded more like real English, not a scripted sentence. You can practice this too. Try reading sentences like, "I can't wait to see how it turns out. This is exactly what I needed today." Put a little extra stress on the important words. Let the rest flow smoothly. Learning rhythm from storytelling. One of the best ways to learn rhythm is by listening to native speakers tell stories. My mom is an amazing storyteller. She knows exactly how to stretch certain words and speed up others to make her stories exciting. Once, she told me about almost missing her train. She said, "Jara, I was running like crazy. My coffee spilled everywhere. And just as the doors were closing, I jumped in. The way she stretched running like crazy and sped up, jumped in, made the whole story feel alive. If you were late to something, instead of saying, "I was late," you can say, "I was rushing like mad. My heart was racing and I barely made it." This kind of storytelling is much more natural and expressive. Learning through family conversations. Growing up, I learned a lot of English just from talking with my family. Dinner time in my house felt like a mini English lesson. My dad loves asking questions like, "So, what was the most interesting part of your day?" These everyday conversations helped me practice speaking naturally without feeling pressure. Everyday conversations and sounding natural. Growing up, my dad always asked questions at dinner like, "So, what was the most interesting thing you learned today?" At first, I used to give very short answers like, "Not much," or "It was fine." But over time, I realized these moments were a great chance to practice sounding more natural and expressive. So I started giving fuller answers, like, "Actually, I learned something really cool today about how bees communicate through dancing. It's fascinating." Small changes like this helped me feel more confident speaking casually. You can practice this too. Here are some natural answers you can try with your parents or siblings. "How was your day?" "It was pretty good. My morning was really busy, but my afternoon was super relaxing." "What's on your mind?" "Oh, I was just thinking about that funny thing we saw last weekend. Remember that dog with the sunglasses?" The key is to match your tone to the situation. With close friends, you can sound more relaxed. "Want to grab some lunch? Let's hang out later, what do you think?" But in more formal settings, you might say, "Would you like to have lunch together? Let me know if you're available to meet later." Practicing these shifts in tone helps you sound natural in any situation. Using real-life moments to practice English. Let's talk about shopping because you can practice English almost every time you go out. I remember going to a bookstore once, looking for a novel. I couldn't find it, so I went up to the cashier and said, "Hi there, I'm looking for a book called The Night Circus. Do you happen to have it in stock?" The cashier smiled and said, "Let me check for you. Can you spell the title for me?" That small interaction taught me how useful these simple sentences can be. You can practice similar phrases. At a clothing store. "Excuse me, do you have this jacket in a medium?" At a cafe. "Hi, could I get a cappuccino with oat milk, please?" Polite phrases like, "Excuse me, do you have," "Could I," and "please" sound natural and respectful, and native speakers use them all the time. Expressing emotion the native way. Native speakers use a lot of emotional expressions to show excitement, surprise, or happiness. Instead of saying, "That's good," they use stronger, more enthusiastic expressions like, "That's amazing. You've got to be kidding me. That's awesome." When my best friend got engaged, she told me the news and I didn't just say, "Congratulations." Instead, I said, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Tell me everything. How did it happen?" That extra energy made the moment feel much more special and connected. You can practice this in your own conversations. If your friend tells you they won a prize, instead of just saying, "Nice try," "That's amazing. What did you win?" You must be so excited. If someone tells you a funny story, you can say, "No way. That's hilarious. I can totally picture it." Reacting naturally in everyday moments. Let's talk about surprise. Native speakers react quickly and casually when something unexpected happens. One day, my little brother came home with a lizard he found in the backyard. I was so shocked that I said, "Whoa, where did you find that? And does Mom know about this?" It wasn't a formal or rehearsed sentence. It was just a natural, honest reaction. That's how native speakers usually respond when something surprises them. Reacting naturally and adding personality. When I talk in English, it's not just about the words I say, but also how I say them. My tone can show surprise, humor, or excitement, and that makes conversations feel real. For example, One time my little brother told me something surprising, and I didn't just say, "That's surprising." Instead, I said, "No way. Are you serious?" Or, "You're kidding." That's so unexpected. Adding variety to your reactions makes your English sound much more natural. Adapting your English to different situations. When I was in college, I worked part-time at a coffee shop. Different customers required different tones. A regular customer came in and said, "Hey Jara, can I get the usual?" I responded casually, "You got it." Coming right up. A new customer asked, "Hi, I'm not sure what to order. Do you have any recommendations?" My tone became more polite and helpful, of course. If you like something sweet, our caramel latte is really popular. Changing your tone depending on the situation is something native speakers do all the time. Using excitement to make conversations lively. Everyone gets excited about new things. I remember when I first moved into my college dorm. I was nervous about living away from home, but also excited. My roommate, Sarah, came in unpacking and said, "Jara, you're not going to believe this, but I just found this amazing cafe nearby." Notice how she didn't just say, "I found a cafe." She added her excitement, and it made the moment feel alive. You can do the same in your conversations. For example, instead of, "I found a cool place to eat," try, "I found this super cool spot, and it's even better than I expected." Showing your excitement like this makes your English sound natural and engaging, making everyday conversations sound real. Even small situations are opportunities to make your English sound natural. One time I had to call my mom about a problem in my apartment. I said, "Mom, you're not going to believe this, but the sink is leaking again." I didn't just say, "The sink is leaking." Adding, "You're not going to believe this," made it casual and lively. You can try this with everyday events. "I can't believe I forgot my keys again. I've got to stop doing this. Guess what? I finally found the book I've been searching for everywhere." When something surprises you, "No way. That's unbelievable." When something is funny, "That's hilarious. I wasn't expecting that at all." Asking for clarification naturally. One important way to sound like a native speaker is to ask for clarification instead of staying silent or feeling awkward. For example, one time I was talking to a friend about a technical project. I didn't understand part of it, so I said, "Wait, could you explain that part again?" I didn't quite catch it. Some other natural ways to ask for clarification. "Sorry, could you say that again? What do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain it differently?" Using these phrases keeps the conversation flowing and shows that you're engaged. Asking for clarification naturally. Sometimes in conversations, we don't fully understand what someone is saying. Instead of staying silent, native speakers ask in a natural and polite way. For example, you can say, "Can you say that one more time? I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain it again? Wait, what do you mean by that?" Using these expressions shows that you're engaged and ready to continue the conversation. It makes you sound more confident and natural. Speaking in a relaxed way. Another important tip is to make your voice sound relaxed. Speaking too fast or nervously can make your English sound stiff. I remember once giving a speech in college. I was so nervous that I was rushing my words and stumbling. Then I remembered a friend's advice. "Jara, just take a deep breath, relax, and speak slowly. You don't need to rush." After I slowed down, my voice felt much more natural and my words were clearer. The lesson: speaking slowly and calmly makes your English sound more natural and confident. Small changes make a big difference. These are simple tips, but over time, they can make a huge difference. Asking for clarification politely. Speaking slowly and clearly. Using relaxed, natural phrases. It takes patience and practice to sound like a native speaker. But if you practice a little every day, your conversations will feel smoother and you'll feel more confident. Using humor in tricky situations. Sometimes English isn't just about grammar, it's about connecting with people naturally. For example, during college, I joined a group hike. I didn't know many people, and halfway up the trail, someone slipped and got mud all over their clothes. The group went quiet, and it felt awkward. I decided to lighten the mood. Well, now you've got a story to tell. Who else can say they survived a mudslide on a college hike? Everyone laughed, and the awkwardness disappeared. Lesson: small jokes or light comments make conversations feel natural. You don't need perfect grammar, just be friendly and approachable. Other examples. Well, that didn't go as planned, but at least it'll be a good memory. Hey, it happens to the best of us. Don't worry. Using sentences like these makes your English feel conversational and relaxed, showing understanding and empathy. Native speakers often show they care about what others feel, especially in emotional situations. Using phrases like, "I totally get that. That sounds really tough. I know exactly what you mean." These responses make the conversation more personal and help you connect with others. Showing empathy in conversations. One important way to sound like a native English speaker is to show that you understand how someone feels. Even small phrases can make a conversation warmer and more personal. I remember one time my mom called me after a long day at work. She sounded tired and stressed. I wanted her to know that I understood her feelings. Instead of just saying, "That's hard," I said, "Wow, that sounds like a really tough day. You must be exhausted." Just that small change made the conversation feel more caring and natural. Here are some other simple phrases you can use to show empathy. "That must have been really challenging. I can only imagine how tough that was. I'm so sorry to hear that. How are you holding up?" These sentences aren't complicated, but they show that you are listening and that you care. Adding empathy to your conversation strengthens your connection with others and makes your English sound more natural. Focus on connection, not perfection. Remember, sounding like a native speaker is not about being perfect. It's about connecting with people and speaking naturally. Focus on how you deliver your sentences. Use a friendly, relaxed tone. Using natural expressions, small phrases, fillers, and everyday words make your speech feel real. Bringing your personality into conversations. Share stories, reactions, and emotions. Practice in everyday life. Everyday moments are opportunities to practice. For example, chatting with friends, share your opinions, tell stories, or ask casual questions. Ordering food, use polite and natural phrases like, "Could I get a cappuccino with oat milk, please?" Sharing stories. Add small details and emotions to make your story feel alive. Even simple conversations help you sound more confident and natural. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Making mistakes is a normal part of learning. Every time you speak, you improve your English, even if it doesn't feel perfect. Native speakers also make mistakes. It's how we learn. Stay curious. Notice how people speak in real life. Practice often. Try these tips every day in small or big conversations. Enjoy the process. Learning English is a journey, and every conversation is a chance to grow. Remember, it's not about speaking perfectly. It's about connecting, expressing yourself, and sounding natural. Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep speaking with confidence. Take care and keep sounding amazing.